Imagine standing in front of 200 people at your own daughter's wedding and hearing her introduce you as our old neighbor. Not her father. Not the man who raised her. Just our old neighbor. I felt every eye in that room turn toward me while my daughter smiled as if nothing unusual had happened. I could have walked away. I could have confronted her, but I stayed silent. Then something happened that nobody in that room expected. The groom suddenly stopped the wedding, turned toward me, and said, "Sir, they need to know who you really are." My daughter froze, the music stopped, the room went completely silent, and for the first time that day, I realized the groom knew something about me that my own daughter had tried to hide. The morning of my daughter's wedding began like the happiest morning of my life. I woke up before sunrise and sat quietly in the kitchen with a cup of coffee. I looked at the wedding invitation sitting on the table and smiled. Her name was printed beside the name of the man she was going to marry. I had spent years imagining this moment. I imagined walking beside her. I imagined giving her one final piece of advice. I imagined telling her that no matter how old she became, she would always be my little girl. But there was one thing I never imagined. I never imagined that on the most important day of her life she would pretend I was nobody. When I arrived at the wedding hall, the place was already filled with guests. Beautiful decorations covered the walls. Soft music played in the background. People were laughing, taking photographs, and congratulating the families. I stood near the entrance holding a small gift for my daughter. I watched her from a distance. She looked beautiful. For a few seconds I forgot everything else. I forgot the difficult years. I forgot the arguments. I forgot the distance that had slowly grown between us. I thought maybe today would finally bring us back together. Then my daughter saw me. Her expression changed for only a second. She looked nervous. Then she walked toward a group of guests standing near the stage. I followed from a distance because I wanted to congratulate some family friends. That was when one of the guests asked her who I was. My daughter looked at me. She smiled. Then she said something that I will never forget. She said, "He is just our old neighbor." I stood completely still. For a moment I honestly thought I had heard her wrong. Our old neighbor. Those 4 words hurt more than any insult I had ever heard. I had not been her neighbor. I was her father. I was the man who stayed awake when she was sick. I was the man who worked extra hours when money was tight. I was the man who stood outside her school on rainy afternoons because I promised her I would never make her wait alone. I was the man who sold things I cared about so she could have opportunities I never had. And now in front of 200 people I had become an old neighbor. I did not correct her. I simply said hello and stepped away. People continued talking as if nothing had happened, but inside me something had broken. I went outside and stood near the entrance. I could hear the music from inside. I looked at the gift in my hand. It was a small wooden box. Inside was a photograph of my daughter when she was 6 years old. On the back I had written a message. No matter where life takes you, remember that you will always have a home in my heart. I had planned to give it to her before the ceremony. Now I wondered if I should throw it away. A few minutes later I went back inside. The wedding ceremony was about to begin. I found a seat at the back. Nobody introduced me. Nobody asked me to come forward. I watched my daughter walk toward the groom. She looked happy. I tried to convince myself that maybe this was what she wanted. Maybe she was embarrassed by me. Maybe she did not want people to know about our family problems. Maybe she believed her life would be easier if I disappeared from the picture. I told myself not to ruin her wedding, so I stayed quiet. The ceremony began. The groom looked nervous but happy. My daughter kept smiling. Then the groom suddenly looked toward the back of the room. His eyes stopped on me. He stared for several seconds. Then he stood up. The music stopped. Everyone turned toward him. My daughter looked confused. The groom walked slowly toward me. I thought he was going to ask me to leave. Instead, he stopped directly in front of me. Then he said, "Sir, I am sorry, but I cannot continue this ceremony until everyone understands who you are." My daughter went pale. The room became completely silent. The groom turned toward the guests. He said, "This man is not their old neighbor. He is her father." A wave of whispers moved through the room. My daughter looked at me. I could see fear in her eyes. The groom continued, "Before I met your daughter, I heard many things about her family. But I wanted to understand the truth for myself." He looked at me and said, "Sir, I know what you did for her." I shook my head. I told him he did not need to say anything. But he continued. He told the guests that during the months before the wedding he had learned about the sacrifices I had made for my daughter. He said that when he asked my daughter about me, she always changed the subject. He said she told him I was difficult. She told him I was controlling. She told him I had caused problems in her life. But the groom did something my daughter never expected. He spoke to people who knew our family. He learned about my past. He learned about the years I had spent supporting my daughter. He learned that when she needed help, I was there. He learned that I had quietly paid for things she needed without asking for recognition. Then he looked at my daughter. He said, "I do not know why you were ashamed of your father. But I know one thing. I was hurt because she thought being my daughter was something she needed to hide." She cried harder. Then she walked toward me. For a moment I did not know what she would do. She stopped in front of me, and then she hugged me. It was the first time in years that she had hugged me without hesitation. She whispered that she was sorry. She said she had been ashamed of our past. She said she wanted her new life to look perfect. And somehow she convinced herself that hiding me would make everything better. I told her that perfection was never what I wanted for her. I only wanted honesty. The wedding did not continue immediately. The groom and my daughter spoke privately for several minutes. Eventually they came back. The groom looked at me and asked if I would sit in the front. I told him I did not need a special seat. He smiled and said, "Today you are not sitting in the back. You are sitting where a father belongs." So I walked to the front. The same people who had watched me being humiliated earlier now watched me take my seat. My daughter looked at me. This time she did not look away. The ceremony continued. When it was time for the photographs, she stood beside me. Someone asked who I was. My daughter answered before anyone else could. She said, "He is my father." And then she held my hand. I never forgot that moment. Not because the groom defended me, not because 200 people finally knew the truth, but because my daughter finally understood something that took her years to learn. You can hide a person from a room. You can pretend they never existed. You can change the story, but you cannot erase the sacrifices someone made for you. Years later I still remember those words, our old neighbor. At the time they felt like the cruelest words my daughter could have said, but today I see that moment differently. Sometimes people become so desperate to create a perfect life that they become ashamed of the people who helped them survive the imperfect one. My daughter wanted everyone to see the beautiful wedding, but the groom wanted everyone to see the truth. And that truth was simple. A parent does not become less important because their child becomes successful. A father does not stop being a father because his daughter grows up. And love does not disappear simply because someone is embarrassed to admit where they came from. That day my daughter introduced me as her old neighbor. But before the wedding ended she introduced me as her father. And honestly, I did not need anything more than that. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel, share this story with someone who needs to hear it, and leave a comment telling us what you would have done if you were standing in my place.